Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about all things AI with Exasol. I'm Madeleine Corneli, and I'm super excited to deep dive into this topic with you. There is a ton to talk about. There is so much going on in the world of AI, and Exasol is right at the heart of it. We've got some amazing functionality, we've got some incredible use cases, and we have a really exciting and innovative roadmap that I'm all going to talk to you about today. As I go through, feel free to dive in. You can always go on our website for more details. You can reach out to us for questions. And we're always going to make sure to bring you the newest and best innovation when it comes to AI. And of course, we're always excited to hear from you about what you're trying to accomplish with Exasol and AI, because we learn with you and from you as our users. It's definitely a community and team effort. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to talk about a couple different things today. I'm going to start with just an overview of why use Exasol for AI. What is it that Exasol brings that's unique to the AI story, to your AI story? Then I want to talk about how AI truly delivers value and kind of breaking apart the hype from the reality of what AI means, especially in the world of data and analytics. I'm going to talk about performance and AI sovereignty, as these are key components of any AI story, especially in an enterprise deployment. I'm going to talk about how we make developers the center of our AI story, and finally close on a pricing model that works for you, and talk about why that's so important for an AI innovation and AI implementation. So I want to start by building a foundation here. Why use Exasol for AI? Exasol is the fastest database for AI developers, and this is critical. There are four key pillars that set Exasol apart. The first is seamless workflows that integrate with AI models. This is critical. That brings customizability and flexibility to your AI development and your AI deployment. So that means you can bring any model, you can deploy and train models within Exasol, you can connect to hosted or third-party models, and you can integrate all of those into your SQL and data workflows with Exasol's user-defined function framework. Now, I'm going to dig into more of that later. And we're going to talk about the sort of nitty gritty of what goes on behind the scenes there. Now, the next piece is high concurrency, and Exasol is built to be highly performant at high concurrency levels. Now, this is especially critical as we start to move into the world of not just AI, but agentic AI and agentic systems. So now, in addition to actual users interacting with your data, you're going to have agents interacting with your data. So you're just increasing the number of hits and requests that are being made of your data and your data platform. So we're going to see that concurrency load skyrocket. And many data platforms are not built to handle concurrency at that level. So you're going to start to see lag, you're going to start to see latency, and you're going to start to see prices balloon when we start to see this inevitable increase in concurrency due to this wave of agentic workflows. And that's not what you're going to get with Exasol, because Exasol can rise to the occasion and meet those high concurrency needs, which is critical in the expanding world of AI. Third is AI you can trust. So this is all about governance and security and making sure that you're building an AI system that is reliable for you and reliable for your users and your users' data. So for many customers and Exasol users, it means deploying in their own environment. And that's something that you can do with Exasol. So you can host language models and other models directly within your database, your Exasol database, or you can connect to locally hosted models as well. And those two options ensure that you can build the most secure deployment of AI. And so you're not limited necessarily just to the cloud, where you have to rely on third-party services. You can build your own secure AI deployment. We believe that's critical for not just enterprises, but almost all businesses having that option as they move forward. And as we start to worry more and more about kind of containing and mitigating the risk brought on that accompanies the sort of opportunity in the AI future. And then finally, optimal price performance. So of course, Exasol is fast, it's highly concurrent, it can handle huge volumes of data, but we also want to make sure that you're never paying more than you expect for that exceptional performance. So we balance out or accompany our price or our performance with a price that's designed to encourage usage. So it's very different from the pricing model that you see from your, pay per query or your pay per compute on the cloud. It's a fixed pricing model, and that consistency is really critical, especially as you're developing for AI, you're implementing AI workloads. You really don't want to ever have to worry about those surprise bills, and you don't want to have to like tone down your data usage as you're trying to ramp up your AI implementation. So it's really important to have a pricing model that works for you, and Exasol does just that. So let's talk a little bit about the Exasol platform, just to give a background, because this is where everything is built on. So of course, there's lots of different components of a data platform. It starts with the data storage layer and all of the other data sources that exist within your organization or outside of your organization. Now, we know that, of course, no data platform, no data tool exists in a silo or in a vacuum. Ideally, not a silo, definitely not a vacuum. There's always data sources. There's potentially other data platforms. There's lots of different locations where you're pulling data from. And we want to make sure that we work with all of those. And this is about avoiding vendor lock-in, and it's about increasing flexibility. So you're not forced to choose one platform over the other. With Exasol, you can connect it to a variety of different platforms. So you can use Exasol for federated connections to other databases, which is really critical. And that means, hey, if you've got another database that your organization is using, you can continue to use that and bring Exasol in alongside that. Of course, you can also connect Exasol to a variety of different flat files and different storage layers, including Lakehouse storage. So things like Delta tables. And of course, you've got your classic Parquet CSV connections as well. And that includes connections to both cloud-based storage and on-premise storage. So all of that data comes together into Exasol, which of course is your high performance query stack. So it's all about generating those high performance analytics queries that then you can use to power your applications, your BI tools, your analytics, and of course your AI, data science, and machine learning. So you can see how this whole picture starts to come together with that high performance query at the center. But of course, the entire ecosystem that gets built around that. Now, that gives us a little bit of a foundation to start on of sort of what's happening in the world of Exasol and also why Exasol and AI. And I want to follow that up by talking about some AI use cases. And I'm going to talk about some Exasol specific ones that come directly from our customers, where we've been able to unlock tons of value with the implementation of AI solutions. However, I think just talking about use cases in general is really critical. Now, I work with lots of customers, lots of accounts and organizations that kind of feel this push and this imperative to invest in AI solutions. And often the first thing I say to them is, what problem are you trying to solve? Or what opportunity are you trying to go after when it comes to AI? So, of course, Gartner's done a ton of great research on this, and they've talked about the business value of Gen AI use cases. And you can see that they vary by industry. Some of these increase revenue, some of these increase efficiency, some of them manage risk. And we can look by different verticals here: transportation, banking, life sciences, retail. And you can kind of see that there's a variety of different types of use cases, and there's more in some verticals than other. Now, almost every industry has some examples of use cases, AI use cases, where value is added, but the type of value varies. And so I show this as a way to encourage you all to think about not just how do I implement AI, but how do I implement AI in a way that drives value for my organization? And what type of value are we driving? Is it a revenue increase? Is it an efficiency increase? Is it a risk mitigation? Something like data obfuscation. Um, so all these different use cases and really anchor around that idea of value. Don't just do AI for the sake of doing AI because it may look good to investors and customers. Because at the end of the day, there might be a big price tag on that. And you want to make sure that you're actually driving value that matters to your organization. Now, of course, as we're talking about implementing AI and ML across organizations, it's good to just address the challenges up front. Now, these are changing rapidly, but this does give us kind of a snapshot of some of the challenges that you all might see within your organization or within other organizations. So, what's stopping us from moving forward and stopping us from being successful with AI and ML adoption? And how can we kind of mitigate some of these risks and challenges? So enterprise maturity is the top one, and that's just skill set. And some of this means hiring new people, some of this means up leveling people and training people. Some of this just means that this technology is really new and everyone's still learning about that. So we really have to invest in just learning and developing our own teams and our own skills when it comes to AI. Of course, data scope and quality is that second one there. And I think we all know that one, right? If you don't have good data, if you don't have access to good data within your organization, you don't have anything to feed your data scientists or feed your AI. And that data scope or quality is going to show in the AI solutions that you want to build. Now, fear of the unknown, I think that's a really interesting second one here because understanding AI benefits and uses is another key challenge. That's kind of why I started with that use case slide. Let's think about how are we actually implementing AI in a way that drives value. So with that, what I'd love to do is I'd love to talk about a couple use cases that we have here with our Exasol customers to try to bring that story home. And let's talk about how do we actually drive value with AI. So the first story that I want to tell is from one of our large telecom customers. And they have an incredible AI use case that they've been working on for months now. So what their use case is actually quite simple, but it's on a massive scale. And that scale factor is really what made Exasol stand out as the solution or part of this AI solution. So this customer is looking to forecast future usage and congestion on their cell network using historical traffic data. So looking at all of the data from various cell towers from the past 6 months, 12 months, can I predict what that traffic is going to look like next month? And by being able to predict that, they can then optimize and improve their network coverage. They can decide which areas need more coverage, which areas might need less coverage, so they can shift that coverage. They can invest perhaps in new towers, or they can invest in support teams to make sure that their towers have the coverage they need. All of this information allows them to plan ahead, and that goes into building the best, most optimized network for their users. And of course, that translates directly into user satisfaction. So can this customer go out and say they do offer the best network or the best coverage? So even though the forecasting use case is kind of a more classic and typical like data science, maybe even a traditional data science application, the output of this application at scale has massive customer implications. So the details, let's talk about the details of how this use case works within Exasol. So again, I said the scale factor of this is huge because this customer is working with over 100,000 towers across the entire US region. There are multiple sectors and cells per tower, and each one of those sites has over 10 different variables that factor in to the forecast for the upcoming week or month. So all of this historical traffic data is stored within Exasol. Now, this customer has used something called Exasol AI Lab, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit more detail shortly. An AI lab is essentially a data science environment that accompanies Exasol that you can use to develop data science and machine learning and AI assets, and then deploy those onto Exasol. So the customer built out a forecasting function using user-defined functions. Pretty basic forecasting. Again, this is sort of traditional classic data science. Take this previous data, forecast what's coming with that. But the reality is they're doing this at a drastic scale across the entire US region, and they're actually training a unique model for each one of these sites. So using Exasol's user-defined function framework and our highly scalable query processing, we're actually able to train those models in parallel, all within Exasol. And so that exercise is scaled across the entire Exasol cluster in the same way that a SQL query would scale. And then the inferences that get generated also scale. And so, of course, you're generating large amounts of inferences on a repeated scale and on a repeated time frame. And you're scaling that using your Exasol hardware as well. And so this customer wasn't actually able to perform this use case until they started using Exasol to achieve this scale factor. And now they're looking at doing even more frequent forecasting and model training because they were able to scale using Exasol. So I think this is a great example of how, again, more traditional data science application, but in a very relevant and very value-driven application for this business and the customers that this business serves. So I think that's a fantastic use case. Let's take a look at another one. So this is one of our manufacturing customers, and we actually have a longer case study published about this customer. And I like this story for a couple of reasons. So they're using Exasol to perform predictive maintenance. So they have a suite of car washes that they maintain across um, the EU, starting in Germany, all across the country and beyond. And they need to forecast or predict when certain parts are going to break within those sites. Because if a part goes down and they don't anticipate it, that actually means downtime for the entire site, which means lost revenue, which means a worse customer experience. If they can predict when that site is going to go down or when that piece is going to break, they can replace it or fix it ahead of time to minimize or even reduce downtime. So it's lots of different machine data that's being used here to go into this predictive maintenance model. So they have over 5,000 data generating endpoints. They take all of that data into Exasol. And this is where they actually use a partner, Dataiku, to help train and develop the models. But that's using pushdown SQL on top of Exasol. And so that way you get that computing power of Exasol, the high volume you need, given all of the data you have. You're essentially using a data science tool on top of Exasol to give you a more user-friendly experience for building those models. Now, by being able to use these tools together really improves the iteration process for this customer. So they're able to test out new models, try new models, iterate on those models until they find the right one. Then they can deploy that model to Exasol, and then they can execute the entire inference workflow on top of Exasol. They also store the resulting data in Exasol and serve that up to their users as part of this predictive maintenance package. So this is a pretty, you could look at it as a sort of complex workflow, but I'd love to see all of these different pieces coming together, really built on the foundation of that high scalability, high volume, high performance analytics power that Exasol delivers. And so there's three key takeaways of this. So of course, the substantial reduction in unexpected machine downtime is huge. It has customer implications, it has revenue implications. Then there's the optimized resource allocation. So as you look into these and dig into these AI use cases, you often find that there's more benefits than maybe you originally even identified. So because they can accurately predict when things are going to break and where, they know where to send their repair teams. And so they don't necessarily need to send people where they aren't needed. They can be much more efficient with their teams and resources. And at the heart of all of this is improved customer satisfaction. So just more accessibility, more availability of the service that these customers are looking for. So now let's talk about what's happening at the heart of Exasol that's underneath all of these use cases. And how do you actually start to build AI, machine learning, and data science workloads on top of Exasol? So we're diving deeper into the Exasol engine and the Exasol AI platform here. And we're going to talk about a couple key features. So let's start on the left-hand side. So I mentioned Exasol AI Lab. So Exasol AI Lab is a great way to get started. It is a free companion tool that you can get and use with Exasol. At the end of this, I'm going to show you some links so you can get it downloaded and you can try it out yourself. It is a great way to get started. So AI Lab is a set of Jupyter notebooks, so effectively a Jupyter environment. And it's pre-populated with a bunch of utilities and getting started notebooks and use case specific notebooks that we've built that we ship with AI Lab that show you how to use Exasol to deliver value and implement data science solutions. This also includes a bunch of notebooks that are effectively third-party integrations. So things like EBIS, SageMaker, Hugging Face and transformers. So from your traditional data science all the way up to your Gen AI and your more modern AI applications, we have notebooks that cover all of that. And we have bespoke utilities that we've created that show you how to connect to Exasol, import data, publish user-defined functions, all of the above. So AI Lab is really your one-stop shop for getting started when it comes to Exasol and AI. Now, at the heart of this is the Exasol engine, and there's three key pieces that go into making Exasol the engine AI ready. The first, and I've talked about it quite a bit, is the user-defined function framework. And I'm going to show you a little bit more of that later. So the user-defined functions are just that. They're functions that you, the user, define. You can bring any language you want. So you can use Python, Java, Lua, and R. So pretty much all the languages that a data scientist would look for. You can define your function in your programming language of choice. And then you can call that function directly within SQL. And while it sounds simple, that's where kind of all of the secret sauce lives, is being able to define any bespoke function you want and then calling it via SQL. So that means as a data scientist, you can write a forecasting function, and then you can, or a categorization function or a sentiment analysis function in whatever language works for you. You can call out to models, whether they're hosted in Exasol or as a third party. And then you can publish that as a SQL function, which means then you or any other user, if they have permissions, can use that function as they would in any other SQL query. And so we're making data science accessible to a much broader audience through SQL. It's also extremely customizable. So of course, if you're actually building out more complex and nuanced workflows and um, scripts and functions, you need lots of different frameworks and libraries. You can bring all of those within Exasol via something called script language containers. So that allows you to customize the frameworks and libraries that are available within Exasol, the ones that you need to run your functions. Now, the reason we've designed it that way, again, comes from both flexibility and security. So we don't just want to ship a bunch of functions and libraries necessarily. We want you to be able to choose the ones that you trust and that you want to use. Second key piece here is in the middle here, which is our model management. So I've mentioned a couple times how you can manage models and access models from Exasol. And I'm going to talk about this in more detail too, but there's three key ways. You can call out to external models that are hosted on the cloud, you can call out to locally hosted models, and you can deploy models directly within Exasol. This uses Exasol's file system called Bucketfs. And so it's a great way to just have your model live directly with your data and minimize latency and increase control over your models. Now, because this is all built on that SQL platform, that means when we start to actually issue queries that call out and start workflows for us, they're all going to get accelerated and parallelized across our MPP, massively parallel processing query engine. So that's kind of the heart of how we build our AI workflows. And with that, the options are kind of, in a way, unlimited. It's only limited by what you can code and script and build yourself into a function, which is fantastic because it just opens up a ton of possibilities for you, the developers, to actually create workflows that work for your organizations. Now, I talked about user-defined functions, and I just want to dig into those just for a moment to highlight kind of the power of what those are and just a little bit more of what they actually look like. And it's as simple as this. First, you actually create the functions. This is a simple function. And in this example, I'm actually using Python and the OpenAI, an OpenAI endpoint. So I'm specifying the model and I'm specifying the input that I want. So this is going to, this function that I define, and I define the function once, will take an input text. It'll call out to OpenAI using this prompt, and then it'll give me a response. So I create this function once, and then I can call this function from within Exasol using SQL. So let's say I wanted to run sentiment analysis on some Twitter or now X data. So you can see here this get sentiment, parentheses tweet text, that is the function that I've actually written. And so these combined is pretty fantastic because now, again, we've combined that power of data science and scripting and coding with the power of SQL. And what that leads to is, of course, more data and more value and more analytics capabilities. So we can look at the actual Twitter text and we can see there that final column is the sentiment assigned to this, categorized by an AI model. This is a pretty basic example, but hopefully looking at this gets you start thinking about kind of the breadth of what you can accomplish with the user-defined function framework. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk about performance because we know at this point how fast Exasol is, and I'm going to even show you some stats in a moment here about how fast Exasol is. But why do we care about performance, especially when it comes to AI? Because we know that performance is critical for analytics workloads, but why is it critical for AI workloads? And there's a couple key reasons. So first of all, and I talked about this at the outset, this trend towards agentic workloads. So we expect to see a significant increase in machine-driven requests for data, AI-driven requests for data. So this is going to be beyond what normal, not normal, beyond what human users would request. So even if you have an organization of, 100 people and 50 of them are making queries against your database, or maybe only 10 at any given point in time, let's say you now roll out a suite of agents. You have 10, 15 agents. Different people are using those at different times. Maybe you have multiple users. Now you have maybe 100 different queries coming in at one time, 10 of whom are generated by humans and 90 or 100 of whom are generated by agents. So you can start to see like the proliferation of data requests as we introduce agents to our workforce. And that's just going to hammer our databases. So we need databases that are highly performant to meet that demand. Now, the second one is rapid iteration, and this is critical for AI development. So as you're building AI, you need to be able to test it, and you need to be able to improve it as you roll it out. And this is a consistent theme I've seen in early adopters and early implementers of AI. And I see it with the customers, the two use cases I shared with you earlier, which is the ability to iterate and continually refine and improve your AI solution. And being able to do that depends on performance. If every time you want to change something or test something, if that query takes a long time, that adds up. And that means that you're not developing as quickly. And that means you're not giving your users the solution they need as quickly. So think about that development pipeline and think about how critical performance is to keep that short and tight so that you're always delivering the most relevant solution to your users. Next is data volume. So data volume is, of course, we've got tons of data. There's always more. We talk about data as the new oil, all of this, but it's not going away. And we just need to keep, staying aware of that fact. There's more and more data, and that data is becoming more and more relevant because it provides context to AI systems and agents. And so if we want to be able to query that data at scale, we need a system that can match that. And finally, latency and response time, which are just key challenges for agentic success and adoption. So in the same way that when a dashboard loads, if you're waiting 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds for it to load, you might lose interest and go somewhere else, or you might lose trust in that system. An agent is going to be very similar. The longer you have to wait for certain agentic solutions or certain answers from your agent, probably the less trust you are going to have, and perhaps the less likelihood you're going to use that, or at least the less satisfaction. And of course, if that's mission critical, the problem becomes even worse. So performance is going to be critical. How do we at Exasol ensure that we meet this need for high performance? So we've done some cost and benchmarking, cost and performance benchmarking of Exasol against some other big players in the cloud market. And so I'm going to throw some numbers at you that just highlight how performant Exasol is, consistently performant. So this is tests TPCH benchmarking, 10 concurrent users and 10 terabytes of data. And at this level, Exasol was 7 times faster than Amazon Redshift and 14 times faster than Snowflake. In addition, so in addition to being faster, Exasol was also more than 6 times more cost effective than Amazon Redshift and 13 times more cost effective than Snowflake. So that means you can spend less on Exasol and get better results than the leading competitors, which is really incredible. So that means that the same hardware is required to meet these needs. is also going to give you better results and cost less. So that comparison is really critical. Now, I've talked a lot about concurrency. Does Exasol measure up at high concurrency? And yes, it does, because we've also done this testing at high concurrent loads. So both 100 user concurrency and 200 user concurrency, we did dashboard loading tests, and that performance boost measures up across those tests. So Exasol was 15 times faster than Redshift and more than 9 times faster at 200 concurrency. So that's pretty fantastic results, and we love to see that. And of course, performance is also built into how we build Exasol itself, the underlying database. So we build Exasol with performance in mind, and that means we have extensive tests that we run internally that help us ensure that we have high performance over time. And so we have official benchmarking suites. We have customer workloads that we mimic on our own hardware. We have end-to-end workload simulations. And we also have tons of specific tests that we run and that we've built over time that we use to ensure that we are meeting our own performance standards. So next, we're going to talk about AI sovereignty and why is this critical for enterprises? This is all about combining AI with your data. Now, over the past years, decades, we've talked a lot about how to manage the security of your data, both for your users and for your organization. But now there's a new element that everyone needs to think about, and that's the security of your models, your language models, your LLMs, your bespoke models. How do you ensure that those are also secure as well as your data? So there's 3 ways that Exasol approaches managing models. And between these 3 ways, it offers you the most flexibility and the most control over your model and your entire AI system. So you can pick between sort of the most secure way and the most flexible way, or a hybrid approach. And this is what sets Exasol apart from our competitors and many other providers. Many other providers kind of force you into choosing a small subset of models. Some of those are just the models that they themselves have built and trained. Some of them are models that they have, providers they have an agreement with or a partnership with. But the outcome of that is that you're severely limited. And so if you've invested in your own model, if you've chosen a model that fits your needs, you might not be able to actually use that model with your data platform of choice. Now, Exasol ensures that that is not a concern. And we do that with these 3 approaches to model management. So the first way is kind of the most secure, and that's actually deploying your language model directly within Exasol. So this gives you the most control, the most security over your model because it lives directly within your database. So this is a great example of this is using models from Hugging Face or your own bespoke trained models. You can store these directly within Exasol's file system and then serve those up to be accessed by your AI workflows. There's also a hybrid approach. So let's say you've hosted a model locally within your ecosystem using LM Studio or something similar, or you have a specified LM or agentic platform, something like a Cohere, for example. You're hosting that within your own ecosystem. Perhaps it's not connected to the internet, but it might be serving other applications. You can connect directly to that model from Exasol. Then, of course, there's your third-party model as well. So if you have an API endpoint that you're using to access a model, you can easily embed that into a user-defined function as well. So you have these 3 options, and you can choose the one that works best for your organization. And the intent here is to make sure that you have access to, of course, the most advanced and most relevant and most useful models, but also in a way that works for your business. We want to give you both that flexibility and that security when it comes to integrating AI into your workflows. Now, at the center of this whole story is data scientists and data engineers. This is people building our AI workflows, building our AI solutions. And we've created a ton of content and information and functionality that directly supports developers. So I'm going to touch on a couple of these here, and we've already talked about quite a few of them. So first is our native data science integration. So EBIS, Jupyter, Transformers, a lot of these come directly within our AI lab. And this is all about empowering data scientists. We accompany this with documentation and a developer community, as well as, which I mentioned before, these use case and getting started notebooks that are available in AI Lab and help you accelerate your implementation of AI solutions. Then if we look over here on the left-hand side, we talk a little bit more about just that flexibility, right? We want to avoid vendor lock-in. We want you to be able to bring the tools, the IDEs, the platforms that work best for you. And so we're very focused on that interoperability and customizability to reduce vendor lock-in and increase flexibility. That extends to multi-language support. So Python, R, Lua, Java, these are all of the languages that are supported in our user-defined function framework. And then, of course, that scalable performance drives rapid innovation. So as a data scientist, if you're testing things out, if you're trying building models, implementing AI solutions, just having that rapid performance from Exasol makes you able to work faster and more effectively. Now, one of the final points here to talk about is pricing. And there's a lot of different pricing models, but there's kind of two pricing like patterns that we see in the market. And the first is compute-based pricing. And we really saw this show up a lot as the cloud started to get really big. But we have some interesting data on that now that that pricing model has been around for a while. Uh, Almost 70% of consumers report that dynamic pricing actually makes them feel like they were taken advantage of. And almost 70% of budgets have overrun their organization's cloud spending. So not only do people not necessarily trust dynamic pricing, but it's also leading to huge, huge problems when it comes to budgeting. I'm guessing almost everyone here at some point has opened up a cloud bill, whatever their cloud service provider is, and been surprised by what they saw. And we want to completely eliminate that surprise because what that actually leads to is a change in behavior. Because then things like long running queries or unexpected workloads, even ad hoc analysis can drive up your prices in unexpected ways. And this leads to fear-based decision making. So that cost uncertainty is disincentivizing exploration, analytics, iteration. And what we're actually seeing with organizations is because of this usage-based or compute-based pricing, they're limiting their data access and they're limiting their users. So you're actually kind of preventing innovation in a way. Now, that might be kind of an extreme way to look at it, but the reality is that's kind of where this heads, is you have people that are afraid to actually go try new things because they don't know how much it's going to cost. So at Exasol, we have a pricing model that completely shifts that. So our pricing model is built on data volume. Now, of course, data volume increases over time, but that's a pretty slow and steady increase that is significantly more predictable than usage. And this pricing model encourages adoption and scalable analytics. So throw whatever you want, all of the users that you want, all of the queries that you want at your Exasol database, and your price is going to stay the same. And that is fantastic, especially as we're starting to work in more AI solutions, because it means you can try things out, you can test things out, you can have more people working on solutions, you can have more agents that you're building, you can build more and more stuff and test out more and more things and scale out quickly without worrying that you're going to see drastic price increases. And so this is a pretty important paradigm shift. And we think that this pricing model is really critical as we build towards more AI solutions. We really just want to encourage you to try things out, to test things out, to trust that your price is going to be consistent and that you don't have to worry about that. And you can worry about more about building solutions that matter. So when it comes to AI solutions, there's some innovation that I want to talk about. And the first is a new product that we recently launched. And I share this here because we built this solution at Exasol as a way to kind of make all of the AI hype tangible. And we identified a problem that shows up in almost every organization. It's the challenge of unstructured data. And so Exasol Text AI is a new solution. There's actually an entire webinar dedicated to this if you want to learn more. We've built the solution into our platform. Text AI uses AI to translate or transform unstructured data into structured data. And it's a fantastic application of AI models. So you can plug in any unstructured data, your text data, your CSV data, your log data, your PDFs, and we can use AI models to extract critical pieces of information out of that data. So things like keywords, sentiment, entities, all of the above. We can then store that resulting data in a relational format. And so this makes unstructured and semi-structured data analytics ready, which is critical. And I love this application because it takes kind of that promise of AI and the challenges of data that we see in our everyday and unites them to create an actual realistic, valuable solution. So if this is something you're interested in, definitely encourage you to check out some of our additional resources that explain this solution in more detail. Now, this is just one piece of what we at Exasol have built to empower you, our users, with AI, but we have a ton more that we're building and actively launching when it comes to AI. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our roadmap and what's coming. So Exasol Text AI is a solution that we recently launched, so it's going to be available to you with your Exasol implementation. Feel free to try it out. We have a ton of exciting other stuff coming as well. So coming shortly is GPU support. This is going to be absolutely critical for AI workloads because GPUs give us, in some testing, up to a 24x performance boost over CPUs. Now, when we talk about speed and performance at Exasol, we always want to continue to invest and iterate there. So this GPU innovation and investment is just going to make your workloads even faster. We'll also be launching AI functions. So that's more native SQL functions that are AI specific, all built on top of that user-defined framework. So we're going to pre-ship those ones that we believe are going to be most applicable to you, our users. Now, in the world of agentic AI, MCP servers are going to be critical. So we'll be investing in developing Exasol's own MCP server and iterating that over time so we can expose Exasol as a tool or a data companion to your agentic systems. So now you can have agents access your data within Exasol with the guardrails, of course. And that's going to be critical, we believe, as we build towards this agentic future. And then there's a ton more. So vector support is coming. Of course, that's critical for many AI applications. If you want to do things like RAG and fine tuning or document search, all of that requires vector support. Model ops and management. So of course we have some of that today in Exasol, but we'll continue to iterate on that so it gets even easier to manage your models directly within Exasol. And then additional infrastructure investments, so like ARM support. So ensuring that we support the most modern infrastructure. So again, you just always get more and more performance benefits. So essentially the investment that you put into your hardware or your hosting platform, we want to directly translate that into performance gains that you see within Exasol. So tons of exciting stuff coming. And of course, there's always going to be more. And that's kind of where I want to leave it today, which is just all of the exciting work that we have right now. And of course, the exciting things that we're building for tomorrow. Now, we talked about a ton of stuff today, but you can find out even more information on our website. And of course, you can try it for yourself. So some of the best ways to get started are testing out our community edition, testing out Exasol AI Lab for yourself, and just diving in and starting to explore what you can build with Exasol and AI. And then, of course, you can always bring your discoveries and your questions to our community forum. That's a great place to engage and learn more. So I want to thank you all very much for joining and tuning in today. I hope you learned something, and I hope you got a little bit more excited about Exasol and all of the potential of AI. So thank you so much and hope to see you soon.